There is a relationship killer playing out every single day. You may not even know that you're doing it to others. This relationship killer is in how we talk to each other, and it is something that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Clean this up and you will find every relationship in your life will get better, whether it's in your personal life, your business life, or elsewhere. What I am talking about today is the idea of roadblocks. Imagine you're at a family reunion. Your uncle walks up to you with his best of intentions. He says to you, "Hey, how you doing?" And immediately you go, we're just not feeling all that great, kind of feeling low. And that uncle slaps you on the back and says, cheer right up. Tomorrow's a new day. And off he goes. Do you feel better or do you feel worse? Do you feel seen and understood, or do you feel disregarded? That's an example of a roadblock. And oftentimes, the people that we know, maybe even ourselves, we can be coming from the best of places, yet be committing what ends up being a death by 1,000 paper cuts type impact on those we care about. So what is a roadblock? A roadblock is any time that we do not stay with the person as they're sharing something emotional. There are many, many forms of roadblocks. I'll give you a list in just a moment so you can get a flavor. And what I share with you, they are not necessarily always roadblocks. There's a time and a place for everything. Far too often, though, we end up using them and they become roadblocks. The pain and cost of that is distance, is hiding, is retreating, and I sincerely hope that I can help you avoid that. Here are some examples of roadblocks, and this comes from an amazing book called Relationships That Work by Dr. David Wolfe. This is the second edition, and so this is found on page 36. Giving advice, definitely a roadblock. In that same example of the uncle, you might say, "I'm not feeling so good," and he says, "Well, you know what works for me? An apple a day keeps the doctor away." Okay, thanks, uncle. Judging. "Hey, how you doing? I'm not feeling so good." Well, you've always been a pretty negative person. Now, some of these might sound like they're otherwise a very, very good thing. For example, reassuring can actually be a roadblock. Reassuring could sound like, "I'm having a really down day." Well, you know what? You always know how to bounce back. I bet that, if anyone can do it, it's you. Where this gets really tricky is when we receive feedback. And sometimes we may not like that feedback. In fact, sometimes we may disagree with that feedback. We may start to feel hot. We may start to feel aggressive. We may feel like we need to fight back. That instinct is actually a roadblock. To defend is one of the most common roadblocks out there. And so, if I were to share feedback with someone and I were to say, I don't like the way that you spoke there, and they say, "Well, he said it first," how much progress have we made? Seriously, how much progress have we made? Now we have a disagreement and no one's understood anyone and no one's certainly done anything to start gaining whatever lesson there is, and we certainly are further apart than closer together. There are, on this page, probably something like 20 roadblocks. They're not the only 20 roadblocks, nor are they always roadblocks. There is certainly a time to give and receive feedback. And to receive feedback, I think, is one of the greatest gifts. To receive feedback means we get to take a look at how is someone else seeing me right now. And maybe it's valid, maybe it's not, but it's a good opportunity to learn, good opportunity to look within. So what do we do if roadblocks are not the answer? And in fact, if roadblocks are a relationship killer, how do we avoid them? Let's say there's 20, 50, 100 roadblocks out there that are possible. It's probably something like infinity, but let's just say there's a lot of roadblocks. It would be real tough. It would be real tough if you had to learn the exact right response to dozens and dozens of roadblocks. Thankfully, there's only one thing to learn, one thing to commit to, one thing to practice. And that is the very, very simple science, not always easy, but the simple science of mirroring, also known as active listening, also known as reflective listening, also known as conscious listening. So in the instance where I might share with someone, I really don't like how you spoke to that person, the best possible reply you could give might be something like, okay, I'm hearing that you're feeling disappointed in how I replied to that person. Would you be willing to tell me more? Interesting. I've had people come at me with some of the most searing, acid-laden, fire-breathing words in my life. In the boardroom, it gets a little dicey. In romantic relationships, it can get hot and not in the fun way. And I haven't always been perfect, but I'll tell you that the results that come when you choose to hold space, mirror it back, reflect it back, instead of responding, defending, justifying, explaining, etc., the results that come from just hanging in there, mirroring back a few times, you will probably cut down the amount of conflict in your life by something like 80%. And on top of that, through that 80% that you avoid, you now have so much more energy to be happy and productive. It's a much better life. And what you learn in those 80% of moments, you might actually end up learning something pretty powerful about your very own life. I'll close with a story. This is a funny one. This is from my days as a touring drummer. So there's this guy, we'll call him John, to protect the, well, he wasn't so innocent. He was definitely guilty. So John, we'd played a small arena show, and that's how we met John. He was the sound guy at the arena show, and he was awesome. Like, he almost looked kind of like corporate. He looked more Ralph Lauren than he looked like Metallica, if you will. Not many tattoos, pretty clean cut hair, had like a zip up, almost like sailing jacket. John, what a guy. And on top of that, he's damn good at what he did. Amazing sound guy, super easy to work with. Really, really enjoyed. One of the favorite sound guys we ever worked with when we were on the road. And at the end of the arena show, we shake hands. I share with him how grateful I am, and I tell him I hope to see him soon. Well, little did I know, it was only like, I don't know, 6 months later, we were playing in town at a bar, and there were a couple bands coming from other provinces into Edmonton, where I lived at the time. And so it was a little bit of a regional showcase of bands that were kind of making their way up. As we're loading in, I see, guess who? I see is going to be the sound guy today. I'm like, amazing. This is already going to be a great night. So as the night goes on, first band goes on, we go on, then the third band goes on. And I'm kind of noticing Todd's having a few drinks. And by the end of the night, all three bands are kind of scurrying around the stage, tearing down drums and amps and getting ready to load out. When it starts walking towards the stage, but it is a slalom walk. Todd had had a few too many highballs. And by the time he got to the stage, he looks at me and he says, "You guys got your asses kicked tonight." And I was like, "Oh, excuse me? Like, what's that?" He's like, "Yeah, XYZ band totally trashed you guys." And I was like, immediately, I'm wanting to jump into a roadblock. Immediately, I'm wanting to tell him he can F off, or he should shut the F up, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, or like, what do you mean, right? And instead, I let the heat rise and I let it fall. And this wiser part of me said, let's see what he has to say. Now, I didn't exactly mirror back perfectly, like, "You're feeling disappointed that we played so poorly," or something like that. I don't know. But I did say, "Tell me more. Yeah, tell me more." And he goes on to say, like, "Hey, look, you guys all look like you guys are just out of an Old Navy ad." And for a rock drummer to be told you're in an Old Navy ad, like, not so great, right? Not so great. So I said, "Thank you for the feedback, and I hope you have a really great night." Kept loading out, went home. Couldn't go to sleep, though. I'm feeling a little bit bothered. I can't shake what he'd told me. So I thought about it, and I thought, okay, what if he's right? So I crack open my laptop. I'm thinking to myself, who's the most rock star I can think of? And in my head, I'm like, oh, Anthony Kiedis, lead singer of the Chili Peppers. Total rock star. But you know who's really a rock star? Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. That guy just oozes rock star. So I pull up a picture of Tommy Lee. I put it on half my screen. And then I went into my band's media kit. And I pull up our promo shot that we sent out to different newspapers and whatnot. And I put that side by side of the picture of Tommy Lee. And instantly, I burst out laughing. Because you know what? Our sound guy was completely right. Even better, I zoomed in on the photo and I looked at the shirts that we were all wearing, my band and I. And it dawned on me, all three of those shirts were actually from Old Navy. You can't make this stuff up. So had I gotten ultra defensive, had I shut the sound guy down, had I gotten prickly and defensive and used, I didn't have the word at the time, but I now know that the term is roadblocks. Had I roadblocked, I would have never gotten the feedback. I would have never gotten the message. Because I did get the message, I called a band meeting the next day and I said, "Gentlemen, I think we got to work on our wardrobe." And they gave me carte blanche to just go shopping for everyone, which I did. I ended up securing two sponsors for us. And before we knew it, we had a completely new wardrobe. And by the time that we went out on the road, just, a few months later, it was like a whole new band. And not only did we look different, but we played different. We had more swagger. We looked the part. We felt the part. And I'll always remember rolling into a small town in Alberta called Brooks at the old Brooks Hotel. It's like a 1900 former railway hotel turned into a bar. And we push open the door to load in at like 4 p.m. And inside there's like, some farmers and some oil guys and whatnot, a pretty blue collar town. And they hear the clunk, clunk, clunk of my boots as we're walking into the bar. And they all turn over their chairs to take a look and see who was here. And seeing us all decked out in rock and roll attire, they looked us head to toe to head, and there was no doubt who had just walked into the bar. There was no more Old Navy here. I ended up learning a great deal about the importance of fashion in terms of how we relate to it, and how we use it to relate to the world. All of that came because of me not roadblocking the sound guy. Now, maybe I would have gotten the lesson 6 months later or 6 years later or 60 years later. Maybe I still would have gotten it, but I would have robbed myself of an unbelievably wonderful, powerful, life-enhancing lesson just because I was willing to hear him out. This is a great book, Relationships at Work by Dr. David Wolfe, 2nd edition. He also does workshops around the world, teaching communication. I've done his foundational course 4 or 5 times over the last 15 years, and every time I've done it, I've just felt more and more clear and centered and grounded and effective with the people in my life. And I'm bringing him to Austin here. And depending on when you watch this, maybe it's already happened, but head over to austingrowthseminar.com, austingrowthseminar.com, and check that out and see if we have any events coming up with Dr. Wolfe. I don't do them to make money. I do them because, as you can tell on my heart, it has really changed my life. And at minimum, check out the book Relationships That Work by Dr. David B. Wolfe, 2nd edition, page 36, list of roadblocks. Hope that helps on your thrilling pursuit of excellence, and I'll see you in the next one.